Hi, everybody. Welcome to another installment of the TBD with TLG podcast. Your host, Jonathan Nieh, and my partner, Gene Trowbridge.
Hey, Jonathan, how are you?
I'm doing great. Gene, how are you doing?
Good to see you. Thank you. Um, this is always exciting because it's kind of TBD. So I hope we're on the same page of what we're talking about. But let's see.
Well, what are we talking about, Gene?
That's you, Jonathan. You take it away
Well, I guess I got to decide right now. It's to be
right
determined,
now.
right? So I'm determining the topic. So our topic this week is, what is an accredited investor? Why is there an accredited investor definition? And I guess there's been some proposed changes to that definition. So yeah, let's talk about accredited investors, Gene.
Okay, let's do that. Way back when the securities laws were passed, the government realized that they couldn't regulate everyone who was selling a security, and they couldn't regulate every security. There just wasn't time, manpower, and enough money. So they said, there's a whole bunch of investors who really don't need our protection, and they kind of loosely use the words rich people, smart people. And they called them accredited investors. And it went along for a long way that we really didn't know. We really didn't know what accredited investors were. But in 1981, the law changed, and Regulation D, under which most of our deals are done, aren't they, Jonathan?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Regulation D 506B or C was modified, and they put into basically the law, if you would, a definition of accredited investors, still with the same purpose that, hey, these rich and smart people don't really need our protection. So Regulation D had been around for a while, and sponsors could raise money from rich and smart people, but no one knew exactly what that was. And I was raising money at that time, and this Regulation D rule change came along, and all of a sudden I knew, and it made me feel good. And to the broker dealers I was working with at the time, helping me raise money, we all now knew what it stood for. And they came out with a dollar and cent definition of accredited investors. And what they said is, if you were an individual taxpayer and you made you had a net worth of more than $1 million, you were rich. You didn't need protection. Now, not everyone had that net worth. And you've got to think that was 1981 when $1 million was something. So they said, well, there are some people who may not have that net worth, but they have substantial earnings, and they don't need our protection. So they came along and said, okay, if you're an individual taxpayer filing single tax return, it's $200,000 for this year and probably the last 2 years, and you can reasonably expect that to continue. So that would be top line on your income tax return. If your income was over $200,000, you are going to be accredited. And a couple married filing jointly could use both of their incomes combined, and if it hit $300,000 for the total return, they would be accredited. So it's been that rule forever and ever and ever. 1 million or 200,000 or 300,000. And then the Dodd-Frank rules came along after the 2008 debacle. And Dodd-Frank said, we've got some people that may have a net worth of over $1 million, but maybe they really do need our protection. And an example, I'm out here, well, Jonathan and I right now are living in California. There were a lot of people who bought their houses in the 60s, oceanfront for $100,000. And, by 2008, their houses are worth $2 million, free and clear. And the people are living there on Social Security. Dodd-Frank said that's not right. Those people need to be protected. So the major change that I've seen since I've been in the business since 2000, since 1981, is the elimination of your equity in your primary residence from the calculation of $1 million net worth. So it's got to be $1 million, not including your house at all. And in fact, it really doesn't apply much today, but there are times when your mortgage on a house may have been more than the house was worth. That extra bit of the mortgage was actually counted against your other net worth. So if I'm a renter and I have $1 million in the bank, I'm accredited. If that's my net worth, I have no bills, I'm accredited, right? If I'm a single taxpayer and I make $200,000 a year, whether I own a house or not is irrelevant because the house isn't part of the annual income approach. And the same with married filing jointly. So one of the things we've found over time is that this $1 million can be problematic. We have some syndicators who are doctors and only bring offerings to the marketplace that doctors invest in. And in today's world, the value of someone's medical practice is difficult to determine. So we don't even use the $1 million net worth requirement. We go right to annual income, and that works. So in wrapping this part up, rich and smart people by design don't need the protection of the government. They started out just letting sponsors decide who's rich and smart, who's accredited. In 81, they came out with the $1 million, $200,000 and $300,000 test. In 2008, 2009, they came out with Dodd-Frank and said, take your home out of there. So that's where we are with accredited investors. But hold on, Jonathan may have some new information for us at the end. And the other thing that happened is that there are entities that invest. In fact, in the definition of accredited investors, Jonathan, I think there are 15 or 16 definitions of accredited investors, like a bank and a savings and loan and everything that's FDIC insured, all that stuff, which we don't really worry about. But what about a family office? What about a family partnership? What about a group of people that just get together and invest? Well, the rule there is if that entity has $5 million worth of net worth and wasn't formed just to make an investment in this deal, the $5 million qualifies them as accredited. So I run a family office. We've been in business for 20 years. We have $10 million. You come to me and you want me to invest in your deal, which is only for accredited investors. I can invest no matter if I've got minors or juveniles in the family office. It doesn't make any difference. Forget about the individuals. The family office has more than $5 million net worth, is accredited. But what if I just put together 5 guys with $1 million each and we want to go into your deal, but you're only going to do accredited? We all want to invest together. Let's say your minimum investment is $1 million. Okay. We put together our group. We come to you and say, hey, we want to invest. We've got $5 million in net worth. Because that group is formed just to invest in your deal, you'd have to go through the group to each investor. And let's change the example. If all 5 are accredited, you don't have a problem. But if 4 are accredited and 1 is non-accredited or just sophisticated, you can't take that group as a group. You could take the 4 individuals who have the $1 million in net worth, but you can't take the other person. So if the entity's been formed and is in existence and has over $5 million of net worth, accredited, take it. If it's just been formed to do your investment, you're going to have to go through and look at each individual investor and see if they can they can invest with you. Now, you might have an offering that isn't limited to just accredited investors. Maybe you'll take accredited and sophisticated. So in my example, with 4 people that are accredited, 1 person that's sophisticated, you can take them all as individuals, but that 1 person counts towards your 35 limit. So that's what we know about accredited investors up until now. And Jonathan, how do we use that in our offerings? How does this come about when we're doing our Reg D offerings?
Yeah, so I mean, it's in the rules themselves, right? So if you're doing a 506B offering, you can take an unlimited number of accredited investors and up to 35 sophisticated investors. We're not going to really talk about sophisticated investors today, but 506B, you can't advertise, so you have to have a pre-existing relationship with all of your investors. If you're doing a 506C offering, you can advertise, you could generally solicit, but all of your investors have to be accredited, and you have to take steps to verify their status. So for like a individual that's accredited based on their income, you have to look at their W-2s or tax returns for the last 2 years to make sure that they had enough income for those years. For someone net worth, if you're verifying their net worth, you have to look at their assets, and then you also have to get like a credit report from them to verify their liabilities to make sure that their net worth is over $1 million. I actually used to verify accredited investors at my old job before joining this firm, so I kind of know a little bit about the process of verifying investors.
That process, Jonathan, scared the hell out of me when I was a syndicator. I really didn't want to ask an investor for their tax return.
Yeah.
I didn't want to ask an investor for, a certified financial statement, because who the hell has that? Mm-hmm. So it was really burdensome. And it's funny, you go down to the bank, Jonathan, you want to buy a $20,000 car. And there's a 22-year-old banker sitting there who's going to ask you for a stack of papers this big and isn't bashful about asking you for all of your financial records. But now I'm a syndicator and I'm going to take $100,000 from an investor, and I don't want to ask for their K1 or their 1099s for the last 2 years. Crazy. Mm-hmm. Put the sponsor in a tough situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I got pushed back a lot when I was, asking investors for their, tax returns and to verify their net worth.
Because that's because the rule was new, right?
Yeah. But I think now 506C, not many people are using, right? The majority of people are raising money under 506B. And I think one of the reasons is this extra hurdle that you have to go through of verifying investors, right? The sponsors don't want to do it, and a lot of times, even now, the investors don't even want to, provide those documents. So,
yeah, I've had clients who've come to me and said, I'd like to do a 506C. And I said, fine, you need everyone to do this. And they say, well, I've got previous investors who've invested with me. Why do I need to deal with that? Because that's kind of the rule. Mm-hmm. And so the investors who've been used to in a 506B, right? Check the box. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because in 506B, you can self-certify. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, as long as you have that pre-existing relationship and
self-certify. Yeah. But 506C, you can't. And so a lot of sponsors don't want to ask their good repeat investors to go through all this. What are some of the sponsors doing who are going through 506C, Jonathan, to overcome their personal responsibility of doing this?
Yeah. So one of the, safe harbors for verifying that someone is accredited is you can rely on a third-party letter. So you could tell the investor to go out and get their CPA or attorney to sign this letter, basically saying that they verified it. But another easier way of doing it is just sending the investor to a website that'll do the verification for you. So there's a bunch of websites out there that provide those services. You pay like, I don't know, $40-$50 an investor, and they go on the website and they upload their documents to the website, and then they take care of the verification, and then they give you the letter basically saying that this person is accredited. So
you can find that by Googling, right? You find companies just by Google that, and then you'll get a letter as a sponsor. You'll get a letter that says Gene Trowbridge is accredited. Okay. That letter is good for 90 days. So you may have to do that over and over and over with the same investor if you're doing 506C. But the second and third time couldn't be quite as complicated as the first time. So that's what's happening.
Yeah. So I mean, there's been a lot of pushback on the definition of accredited investor, right? A lot of our clients and a lot of people in the industry think it's too restrictive, that they should open up the definition to more people to allow more people to invest. And the SEC, they listen, and last year they actually came out with some proposed changes, I think in December. And how the SEC rulemaking works is they come up with proposed changes and they open it up to public comment. They get comments from the public, and then they issue the final rules. So right now, I think they're in the process of gathering comments still. But we have an idea of where they're going because they released these proposed rules back in December. So let's talk about some of these changes, Gene. So the first one, the first proposed change that they're going to do to accredited investors is kind of open new categories for an individual to qualify, right? So before, an individual can only be an accredited investor based on their income or their net worth. Now they want to open it to, I guess, professional designations. So if you have a license to sell securities, if you have like a Series 7 or Series 65, that could qualify you as an accredited investor. And I guess the logic behind it is, you already went through all this education to get that license. You don't really need to be protected from these, more risky investments.
Plus, you're already giving advice to other people.
Yeah.
You're telling other people whether the investments are suitable for them or not. So that really makes some little self-serving, isn't it, for the SEC to come up and say that all of our members who pay dues to us and get our licenses are now accredited. Yeah. Okay, fine. That's just the cynic in me, but we're trying to promote capital formation, right?
Yep.
Ease up the ability for capital formation. That's good. What else?
So another, I guess, couple licenses that could qualify. I think they talked about allowing people with a CPA or CFA or MBA to qualify as an accredited investor. How do you feel about that, Gene?
Well, depends upon what the MBA is in. I bet when the comments are done, they're going to come back and say, well, it better be in financing or something like that. I don't know. It could be an MBA in marketing.
Yeah.
So that's fine. And then is it going to be restricted to certain colleges?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is it going to be just online or just live? Or if you're from the University of Chicago and you get an MBA, I bet you're qualified. But I don't know if you're from some other place. If I was
University of Phoenix,
but I better not. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with University of Phoenix. I think we better say that right now. So, but I think that there's a grade there.
Yeah. Okay. So another proposed change is adding the knowledgeable employee definition to a private fund. So previously, if you're a private fund, one of the definitions of accredited investor is if you're an officer or director of the private fund, you count as an accredited investor for the purpose of the fund, right? You can invest in the fund because you're an officer or director of that fund and you're an accredited investor. But they want to add another kind of category to that subcategory of, you're not an officer or director, but you're a knowledgeable employee. And it's not really clear exactly what that means. Like, how much knowledge do you need as an employee? But I don't know. I thought that's kind of interesting.
One of the examples I heard at, the conference that we go to in Scottsdale every year that talks about this. One year I went by myself and one of the FINRA guys said, here's an example. We've got a young lady who's working for a publicly traded REIT on Wall Street. She has $900,000 in the bank. She rents. She has no bills, and she makes $180,000 filing individually. She's not accredited, but she's clearly a knowledgeable employee because what she does is she does all the financial analysis for the REIT.
Hmm.
So there's an example of someone that they thought the million and the net worth, the net income requirement was too restrictive, and she should be able to invest at least in her own funds, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, the proposed change. So I know you were talking about family offices before, but actually family offices weren't part of the definition of accredited investors.
Right.
So one of the changes is adding family offices to one of those entities. So the family office has more than $5 million in assets, that qualifies the family office as a accredited investor. I think that totally makes sense.
Right. And I think that they said that if it was an LLC where all the members were accredited, but the LLC didn't have $5 million worth of net worth, you could call it an accredited investor. And that's kind of insignificant because you don't count accredited investors anyhow. But I think that was something I saw.
Yeah. Well, when I was verifying accredited investors, one of the, I guess it's not really a catch-all category, but one of the definitions is as long as all the equity owners of a company or entity are accredited, then by definition that entity is accredited. So we kind of said, oh, okay, if an LLC, all the members are accredited, then that means the LLC is accredited. But I guess the new proposed changes would actually put that in there that,
Right.
the LLC, if all the members are accredited, then the LLC is accredited. So,
because I know we've had this question where people come to us and say, hey, there's a general partnership. The guy who's in charge is accredited, but do I have to worry about the other people? Who signs a subscription agreement saying they're accredited? Well, this would go a long way to clear that up. If everyone's accredited, just one person can sign for the whole entity, and that would be good.
So I did forget to mention regarding individuals, but going back to for married people, you could use your income, but the threshold is $300,000 for a married couple instead of $200,000, right? So one of the proposed changes is replacing spouse with, or not replacing spouse, but expanding spouse to spousal equivalent, right? So, I think the wording they use is if you're cohabitating with, or you're cohabitating in a relationship that's kind of equivalent to a spouse, that counts too. So domestic partners, right? If you've, been living together enough where you count as cohabitating, you could use your collective income to go towards the definition of accredited investor. So
that makes a lot of sense because until you got married, you and Viv might have had to stand on your own. If this rule had been in place, the two of you collectively would have qualified. That's probably good. And there's a lot of people out there that are going to qualify under this, and I think that's great. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to be the $300,000 rule or not. Do you know?
I assume so. The only reason they would be talking about spouses is, when it comes to joint income, right?
Yeah. But they wouldn't be filing a joint tax return necessarily, would they?
That's true. Yeah, no.
They're in a spousal relationship, maybe still filing individually for one reason or another. Yeah. Well, we'll have to read that. As you said, comments, the comment time period is out there. We're waiting for comments. I have not written any comments. In the past, I've written comments on a lot of proposals, but this one I didn't think there was anything exciting. Are they going to change the dollar amounts?
So in the proposed changes, they didn't say that they want to, but they want to take comments on whether or not they should, right? So I think one of the questions they asked is, should they tie it to inflation, right? Should the income and net worth thresholds be tied to inflation? Because if you think about it, the definition came out in 1981,
right?
And they haven't increased those numbers at all. And $200,000 in 1981 is way different from $200,000 now. Same with $1 million. So
yeah, the statistics say that that the $1 million then would have to be 2.6 million today, and the 200,000 would have to be 520,000. So that's if they applied that rule, that would really make a difference. And I'm asking this because I don't, and I'm a little afraid to ask because I'm not sure that either one of us know the answer to this question off of the top of our head, because this topic is to be determined and we're in the middle of it. But do either one of us know what the percentage of households in the United States is that's accredited? I think we've seen that figure recently.
Yeah, I've seen different numbers here and there. I've seen as high as, like 10% of American households, which would equate to, almost 30 million people in the United States are accredited.
Mm-hmm.
So, if they change those numbers, that's obviously going to decrease.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't think that's the intention. The intention is to open up. What do we know, Jonathan? We know that Regulation D is responsible for like 1.6 trillion dollars of money raised every year. Mm-hmm. And that's what funds small businesses, private placements, Regulation D. The Jobs Act wanted to expand the ability of Regulation D to attract money. That's why it's called the Jobs Act.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then accredited investors, the same issue. Let's expand the definition over what it was in 1981, and let's try to attract money and make capital formation good, easy, so that people can invest, and people who are looking for investments. And it's not just real estate. There's all sorts of businesses out there that get all their funding through the capital market. And we need those, those businesses that invent vaccines and all this stuff to have money. So I think it's an issue that's timely. And that's probably why I have no idea why we decided to talk about it today, but it's a timely issue and everyone should pay attention to that.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say, Jonathan. Take us home.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed our talk today about accredited investors. I know we're going to be waiting for the SEC to, release their final rules, because that's going to affect our clients and affect us. So, once they do, maybe we'll do another one of these podcasts to talk about the final rules that come out.
That would be to be determined, right?
Oh yeah. Sorry. I'm determining it too early, Gene.
When should people turn on to watch these podcasts? Are we regular, or is that just guesswork too?
As far as I know, it's every Thursday at noon. You could tune in on YouTube. That's where we premiere it. I think we do a YouTube premiere so that we can have a live chat, so people could chat with me if they want. But yeah, every Thursday at noon.
Noon Central?
No, sorry, noon Pacific. We are in California.
Okay, noon Pacific. There we go.
Yeah.
Good.
But thanks everyone for tuning in. Tune in next week for another installment of TBD with TLG.
Thank you, Jonathan.